Now, who thinks that if we do this, though, we get to keep this planet forever? I won't ask you what you think about the whole climate thing, but did you know that no matter what we do, and we are supposed to be good stewards of the earth, God put us here for that, but no matter what we do to keep it, even if we do everything perfectly and we repair any damage we may have actually caused, we don't get to keep it forever. God's going to destroy it anyway. He is. We're so focused in a society of saving the planet. We've seen it for decades now. I remember growing up hearing about it over and over and over again, even as a kid. It was in all the movies and the cartoons. And when you would actually want plastic over paper bags at the shopping center because you were saving trees, and now it's the opposite. And how none of Al Gore's doomsday predictions have ever happened, no matter what we changed. How we are supposed to avoid these climate things while the government seeds the clouds. Or how it lets the rest of the world poison it and blame people for not recycling or using plastic straws. Or blaming you for driving regular cars while celebrities fly to restaurants 20 minutes from their home. Or into a climate meeting in Africa where they tear down huge swaths of the rainforest to make a new highway so they can get to their climate meeting. Did you see that? They cleared huge things so they could build a whole new highway so the rich people can go from the airport all the way to this clandestine meeting on how to save the rainforest. Yeah. We're here as stewards of God's planet and God's gifts and God's plan. And we are to respect his creation and the animals. The Bible actually speaks about mistreating animals, for instance. And don't get me wrong, I think a lot of this is, a big scam, and they're lying to us and they manipulate us. And you see more and more of that come out all the time. But we still have our responsibilities, and that doesn't change no matter what is going on. But God is going to destroy the planet in the end. That doesn't mean we don't care, because God told us to care, but let's face facts. The world is not meant to survive. Some people don't care about the planet at all, which is kind of nuts. We're supposed to care, like I said. I mean, some people aren't even worried that the sun's going to die out naturally in 5 billion years. Kill all the life on the planet. Seriously, though, almost 80% of people on this planet consider the planet sacred in a poll. They consider the planet sacred. Do you know the Pope actually has an advisor who is a Gaia worshiper? And Gaia being the Mother Earth thing, but using the Greek name Gaia worshiper. And I'm not joking. We have a tendency to worship the creation over the creator, especially humans. We've done this for a long time. It's no different. A lot of people worship angels without even realizing they're worshiping the angels. But, we worship angels over the creator. That's probably why God kind of keeps information back a bit. He knows it's our tendency. It's no different than the older religions that did the same thing. They worshiped the lesser gods over the creator gods every time. It's been trained into humans by the fallen long ago, and we still do it. Last week we were in Revelation 8, and we had just started looking at the 7 angels with the 7 trumpets. The 7 angel pets. No. Wait. The Trumpjewels. No. Never mind. Anyway, this week we'll be getting into the judgments that come from them. These judgments are against the earth and its inhabitants, but they're aimed at the earth. And God spends a fair amount of these judgments aimed at the earth. And the people are secondary. And when I say its inhabitants, I mean those who are citizens of earth in the Greek. People who call earth their home. Now, we, as Christians, are not citizens of earth. We are citizens of heaven, right? Very good. Get you a sticker. These judgments are all about to be let loose, and as we saw last week, it's a very solemn thing. There's silence in heaven for 30 minutes right before this, because that's not how it was intended to be, but it's the reality of humanity's sin. The judgments on the day of the Lord described in the 7 seals, where the 7 trumpets are the 7th seal, and the 7th bowl is the 7th trumpet. And it's all wrapped up in those 7 seals. And it takes, of course, over 7 years, but the judgments hit in the second 3.5, as we talked about. So it really focuses on that second half. And this is solemn because, and I'm going to keep building on this idea, sacrifices are sacred. Sacrifices hurt. They're supposed to. These people are dying, and that's no laughing matter. Sometimes we feel a sense of vindication, knowing that one day we'll be proved right. But the truth is, that means a lot of people go to hell for us to be proved right. That's not something for us to be happy about. They're dying in their sin in spite of the sacrifice that Jesus made. And that's also no laughing matter. These people never took that sacrifice seriously, and now they're sacrificing their own lives instead. We all sacrifice someone to someone or to something in our lives, and our lives are going to be sacrificed one way or another. It just makes more sense to me to get the better end of the deal between the two options. So this is a solemn time of honoring the sacrifice. By the time we get here, the angels are ready, and they've been ready, standing before the Lord, not just for the 30 minutes, but much longer. We know Gabriel said that he was one of these angels when he appeared to Joseph, so we're talking at least 2,000 years, Probably longer, likely since the creation, maybe just since the fall when their position was made clear. Either way, they wouldn't have understood it yet. Remember, they learn about the plan through us. They're about to signal judgment on the earth for those who prefer the earth over salvation. So starting in verse 7 of chapter 8, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees were burnt up, and all green grass burnt up. The second angel sounded, and it was as though a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And a third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And a third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of water. And the name of that star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was smitten, and a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened. And the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. We're going to stop there because technically verse 13 goes into the next set. This happens a lot with verses because remember, we put them in and we put the chapter breaks, so there's a lot of times things aren't broken where they're supposed to be. So let's take these apart a bit. The first is hail and fire mixed with blood. That sounds just lovely. Don't wear light colors that day. Hail is always used of judgment. Hail and fire. We see this in Egypt with the plagues in Exodus 29, or Exodus 9, 23 through 25. We see it in Isaiah 28:2. And when God talks to Job and Job's friends about how little they actually know, in Job 38, 22 through 23, Job and his friends, I wouldn't call them friends, they're horrible friends, but God comes to him in a whirlwind and gives him a science lesson for several chapters. And there are statements in there that are much, much earlier than science discovers them to be true. And then there are some we still don't understand. It's all related to the idea of the holy nuke of Antioch we see God hurl at Sodom and Gomorrah and the other 8 cities around the now Dead Sea in Genesis 19. So those smaller scale events are now ramped way up by God. Remember, he said he will do nothing that is not already revealed in his word. So this shouldn't surprise us. He's warned us, and he's even shown it before in some other judgment. Now, we also see a third of the trees are burned up. And it's interesting because the Greek word here is dendron, which is used to say trees, but typically in Greek it means fruit trees. And even though it can be, they have a different word when they mean like non-fruit trees, because they refer to them as timber. So they have a different word or different root. It doesn't have to be, but typically it's fruit trees. So trees in Scripture typically refer to the fruiting variety. That's just what it typically refers to, because it talks of harvest. And this would be an attack on natural food sources, right? Wiping them out, so it makes sense. But removing trees in general would cause a major problem, as anybody who's spent time around farm knows. A lack of trees would result in massive erosion, right? No protection from winds, less oxygen, right? No shade. It would be damaging to animals and the food supply. And we know he isn't targeting the Amazon because the rich have already done that for us. So this is part of the seventh seal, and that seal brings with it thunder, lightning, and an earthquake. And this adds hail mixed with fire and blood. So this is one crazy storm. The result of storms and earthquake, for the sake of argument, could be volcanoes. That tends to happen with massive earthquakes. And they spew hot rock. So you could, sometimes giant chunks of it. So you could have that situation there from an earthquake, possibly. Some people have tried to explain it that way. That's volcanoes erupting from the earthquake. So in the targeted area, a third of the trees are gone. And the grass, but that would be a third of the grass. And the buildings in the way, and the people. So this is a major upheaval here. Sometimes we can read these things very glibly, and we don't really consider what would really be happening here, or the devastation. This is a third. So we're talking a third of the world is targeted. It could also be a local identifier. So the Bible tends to make phrases, but it's locally identified. It talks about an area, but it doesn't mean the whole world. For much of the world, half of the world's continents weren't really considered in its statements. So it's a lot of greenery to lose. The plants and the grass and the trees and shrubs are all gone, since the word includes all that. Not only, so 30% of the planet is not water, right? Not covered in water. 85% of that is green biomass. Okay? So if we're talking a third, we're talking 24% of the planet total is actually green. So 8% is destroyed, a third of it. So 8% is destroyed, taking that 24% of the planet that's green down to 16% of the planet that's green. You know what that would do to the world? Can you imagine what that would do? It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's huge. That's a massive devastation. What it would do to animals? What it would do to humans? What it would do to electric cars? The crops would be gone. Not even the immortal GMO cancer corn can survive God's wrath in this. It's all wiped. The Apostle Paul warned us this would actually happen. Romans 1:18 said, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness." He said the wrath was going to come. But God's not done yet. That's just the first trumpet. The second trumpet brings with it an attack against the oceans and what is like a great mountain of fire being cast into the waters. Jesus said that if you had just the faith of the grain of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. That sounds really dangerous now. This one can be a little tricky. John sees a thing like a great mountain, giant mountain that was on fire. The word is hos, meaning like or as or in the same manner as. So it's not a mountain. He's saying it's like a mountain. So maybe a cone or a pyramid? Just thinking it's like a giant mountain, or maybe just a giant rock. Actually, the Great Pyramid is referenced in the Bible. I don't know. Mentioned in end time prophecy. Is it a mountain? John says it's like one. Some people say it's a meteor or an asteroid. Asteroids are smaller. The next one's a little meteor. Get it? Okay. So we're about to see an actual one hit the earth called wormwood, and he knows what that is, and he doesn't describe them the same way, so chances are they're not the same thing. He would just phrase it that way. And if that were the case, why did God show him that symbol? John doesn't seem to know what it is. He says it's like a mountain, right? So it's an interesting choice. Maybe that's because it's not what it is. Again, this could be an attack on the gods. I don't keep bringing this up, but this is a thing God does over and over again. Because remember, hell is not made for humans. It's made for the devil and his angels. These fallen who have set themselves up as gods. And all of these encounters in the Bible, part of what you understand as a supernatural worldview, is that there is a supernatural element to everything. That Jesus is not just talking to people when he speaks, and how often his actions and his words and his miracles are directed at the supernatural influences that are around. And we'll get to that eventually, but this is common throughout the Bible. There is an underpinning in everything that's said and all the events of the supernatural beliefs at the time, whether God's usually directly countering them. He's proving himself. But he doesn't seem to want to prove himself against humans. He seems to want to prove that the gods they worship are fake. The Greek gods, for instance, their home was a mountain. They lived up on Mount Olympus, right? The fallen started out on a mountain. Most gods throughout history, their homes are mountains. You go up to a high place to worship them. You set up temples. So it's something that's in the stories ever since. Prometheus stole fire from the gods. He was chained to a mountain by Zeus as his punishment, where an eagle would eat his liver every day. It would regrow. That was all eternity. That was his punishment. That's why humans have fire, they said. Fiery mountains are a typical idiom in these cultures for volcanoes. And they're pretty much always attributed to gods and their anger. Somebody's mad, right? Job versus the volcano. Anybody remember that movie? Whole idea, let's appease the volcano, right? The volcano's upset, we got to give a sacrifice. It's the idea that there's a God that's controlling this. That's not just a glib movie idea, that's a lot of people are. Vulcan, not Star Trek, Vulcan was the Roman god of fire, specifically volcanoes. He's the Roman version of Hephaestus, who was the forger of the gods in Greek. He worked in a mountain down. A burning mountain symbolizes judgment of an evil kingdom. It's interesting that Hephaestus worked in a forge, and you could say that God's anger has been forged by man's sin for a long time. But a burning mountain speaks of a judged evil kingdom. We see this in Revelation 18, if we skip ahead a bit. There's a strong angel that threw a stone like a great millstone into the sea. And he said that it is Babylon, judged. So this concept is already there. Jeremiah 51:25 speaks of Babylon. It says, "Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyeth all the earth, and I will stretch my hand out against you, and roll thee from the rocks, and make thee a burnt mountain." Nothing he hasn't said before. Enoch, in the book of Enoch, 8:13 and 21:1, the fallen angels are actually spoken of as stars like great mountains. Just to prove that this is not even just biblical, this is a common theme in the Semitic cultures. Okay, this is a common idea for all their minds. This is how they see things. You may have thought of this, maybe not, but we have a fiery mountain of sorts already in the Bible. It's called Mount Sinai. God is the fire. And his presence on the mountain literally burned the top. Here's a picture. I'll show you a picture. That is not a shadow. That is burned. I'm going to show you the next picture from the other side. It's taken from this hilltop, showing you the burned rock on that hilltop. And some will try to tell you that that's a normal occurrence, but it's the only mountaintop like that. And the rocks are actually slightly melted, as if an intense heat was present on that mountain. We found a lot of this. In the mount, that's not the traditional Mount Sinai, by the way, but in it we also found the cave that Moses slept in while he was there, and the 12-stone memorial set up over the Jordan River. The rock that Moses struck, Mount Horeb, I don't know if you've seen this one, it's been popular lately, but that's a mountain, that's a rock, Mount Horeb, that has split in half and has a massive amount of water erosion from the center out, as if a lot of water went through it. Except there's no water, they're in the middle of the desert, and it's up on a hill. Or relics of Pharaoh's army. The Red Sea, Egyptian artifacts buried near a point of crossing. They have zero trouble with other gods. Okay? This is a thing that we kind of get hung up on as American Christians. The idea was, again, never that my God exists and yours doesn't. The argument was which one's stronger. The argument was which one do I want to worship? Even in the Greek mind, you had a bunch of them and they all ruled you, but which one did you align with? Which blessing did you need? This was a common theme all the time. Okay? And this is part of that supernatural worldview, understanding that people, this is how everybody else thinks. In America, we have this bubble that it's just Christianity, and this is the way everything is. God resides on a mountain, and fire is emblematic of his judgment every time. So, to the Jewish mind, this is symbolic of the giving of the law, because it reminds them of the fire on the mountain. So what if this judgment is a sign from God proving his authority, why he uses this symbol? By judging based on the law that he gave, throwing a mountain of his presence at the world to judge it, using the law he sent down for that purpose. That's the point of the law. He uses a mountain because they all try to set themselves up, and only his mountain is the point of a true king, right? So, if we're not found in the book of life, we are judged by the law. That's how this works. And of course, your qualifications will never measure up based on that. And the next one's about seas, the one with cargo ships in them. So this is oceans that we're talking about. This can actually just denote the Mediterranean or Red Sea, actually, this phrase. It doesn't necessarily mean all of them. Because typically when the Greeks use this word, they were just talking about those two. But if we do count the whole world again, and we focus on just a third of it in that area, there are currently 56,591 registered merchant ships as of yesterday, flying 150 different national flags. So a third of them means that 37,915.97 ships are left. And if you think it's silly of me not to round up, God's pretty literal. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised that he leaves 0.97 of a ship, just to make his point. This also affects a third of the ocean, a third of the fish, and a third of the life that's in it. And the area is turned to blood. Now again, turning red has always been a sign of judgment. Death, the plague, or just bad juju in general for people in most of Earth's history. Red is usually a bad sign. It's a sign of war. It's a color of anger and wrath. But actually turning into blood through a chemical shift or creating a dead zone where red tide can come in masse would devastate all the life. Coral reefs, for example, they cover about 109,800 miles of the ocean, which is only 0.1%. But they are instrumental to all wildlife and the ecosystem and tourism. There are entire cultures that live on them entirely and what they provide. So it's crucial for many of the ocean's life forms. You would remove entire species if you destroyed you would move a lot of them if you destroyed the coral reef. You upset this balance and it leads to algae growth that is normally kept in check. And this creates an environment where all the algae actually hyper-saturate the water with nutrients. So the algae grows like crazy, and no fish can live there. It creates a dead zone. And so the algae can bloom all it wants, but no fish are anywhere near it. So it could be literal blood, which would do the same thing, or it could be this red tide that we've seen happen. Either way works, it doesn't really matter. I tend to view it that you need to take the Bible literally, because if there's ever a mistake, it's because you just didn't take God's word literally enough. This would be devastating to the economies and societies that rely on the fish and live to make money. So a third of the fish, a third of the sharks, a third of the whales, a third of the dolphins, a third of the turtles, all of it dead. Sushi prices would skyrocket. The fishing industry would tank. That's a major industry. They would have a third less ships to work with, and the people on those ships, not even mentioned. The entire Atlantic Ocean, think of the Atlantic Ocean. That's about a third of all the water. So just remove it. And if you just removed it, just vaporized, right? If you're dealing with a worldwide scale. In Hosea 4:3, God said, "Therefore shall the land mourn, and everyone that dwelleth therein shall languish. With the beasts of the field, the fowls of the heaven, yea, the fishes of the sea shall also be taken away." In Zephaniah 1:3, we read God say, "I will consume man and beast, I will consume the fowls of the heavens and the fishes of the sea, and the stumbling blocks with the wicked, and I will cut off man from the land, said the Lord." So we reach the third trumpet where we see a great star fall from heaven, clearly a meteor named Wormwood. And this one has gotten the attention of a lot of people for a long time. Or for our Russian friends, the word is Chernobyl. The Old English word was hemlock, which was a poison, because the Greek word is absinthium, which is the word we use for absinthe, which is the main ingredient of that drink. It's interesting because it is very unhealthy to drink, but we've turned it into alcohol. We have found a way to drink it. We're not really sure where the word comes from. You know that? We don't know. There's a word that's similar in Persian. It might come from Persian. We don't know. But it seems to mean undrinkably bitter. And there's no cure for hemlock poisoning even today. We have no way to fix it. It's deadly. It causes vomiting, and then seizures, and then respiratory failure and death. So if you reread this verse with this understanding in mind, and the name of the star is called Wormwood, and a third part of the waters become hemlock or poison. Many men die of the waters because they were made bitter, or agitated, actually is the word. It was used in Greek time as a medicine. It's the plant Artemisia absinthium, or common wormwood. And even though it will kill you, it was used many ways. See, it's kind of circular reasoning with a word. So the word means the plant, and the plant means the word, so we don't know. It was a medicine, as I mentioned. It's used as antifungal, antimicrobial, anthemic, which is antiparasitic, antimalarial, antidepressant, and hepatoprotective, which protects the liver, and an insecticide. It will kill it. It makes me chuckle a bit. Not to sound crass, but it's kind of like God's chemo. Like, I'm going to poison you just enough and hope that the disease dies before you do. Because that's essentially the point of chemo. And in this one, that's what absinthe does. Hemlock. The use of this was we'd poison you just enough to kill whatever's in you and hope you don't die in the meantime. But God needs to get rid of things he doesn't like sin and those who are unrepentantly doing it. So he picks wormwood, a thing known to remove diseases, parasites, and infections. Humans were taught to look at the stars and the planets and nature, and they associate the creation with gods. This is what they did. So all the lesser gods were a planet or a star, right? Or nature. And this hasn't changed. We talk about Mother Nature. How many people have heard that term? Oh, a godly amount of times in your life. Mother Nature. And then the other main god of the time, science, tells us that it's not really that big of a deal, Mother Nature. and yet sings her praises all the time when it wants to talk about evolution. God is attacking the beliefs of these people. He's attacking what they put their faith in, what they hold to. He's attacking the gods that are still associated with them. I mean, the ocean could be Poseidon. Like I said, people still believe this. You just don't hear about it here. He attacks the sun, the stars, the moon, and now the trees, the plants, the oceans, the wildlife, the fish, and in essence, our entire economy. And if you think money is not a god, you've been in America long enough. So he hits every major god one way or another, and many of these are actual identities of Satan. So trying to save Mother Nature is practice and insanity, really. You're not going to get anywhere eventually. This meteor hits the rivers. It doesn't hit the seas like the previous one. It hits the rivers and the fountains of the water. This is different. So like wormwood is different than a mountain of fire. This makes the water so bitter men die from it. It poisons it. The word for rivers here is potamos, meaning river or flood. And it really refers to flood or gushing water or torrent of water. It means moving, rushing water, not just like a pool. So a giant, super bright, burning ball of judgment hits the oceans, vaporizing a third of it. What would that do to the oceans? Well, there'd be a big vacuum to fill. It's like if you just, scoop out water, all the rest of the water floods in to fill it. Nature abhors a vacuum. You just created one, a massive one. And if you can vaporize water, you vaporize all the oxygen nearby too. So the atmosphere for quite a ways has to adjust. So all this water rushes in from everywhere else. So everywhere else naturally has less water in it. But the initial impact would create tsunami-class waves. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but meteors are not nice things when they hit us. There was one, it's been several years now, a couple decades, I think. Russia got hit by a meteor. It was in the news, and it wasn't very big. It was about this big. And it hit, and it shattered windows miles and miles away. It thankfully hit the ice, or else it would have done major devastation. But so it hits, and it creates tsunami-class waves that go out. This is big enough to vaporize an entire ocean. So we're talking a lot here, right? Goes out, covers the land. Okay, let's say just the Red Sea for the sake of argument. Mediterranean, doesn't matter. It goes out, and these waves cover the land, right? And then this star hits and poisons the drinking water. People don't drink ocean water, it's salt water. They drink drinking water. So it wouldn't matter if you made the ocean water undrinkable, nobody drinks it. We're clearly talking about drinking water. Well, if you have a tsunami-class wave coming in and it's poisoned, that water now poisons everything it touches. Hemlock is spread everywhere, right? If you have them in quick succession, where one hits the water, vaporizes it, sends waves, the other one hits the remaining water, and it's spread by the waves and water moving, all your drinking water is poisoned, all of it. Because if it's, a wave this high, it's going into your well. And like I said, hemlock is extremely toxic. Wouldn't take much. And so the tainted water covers the land, poison gets into the drinking sources directly. No water, no food, no fish, no trees, no fruit, no vegetables. Your garden, gone. Then the fourth, where again the sun is hit. He hits several things multiple times. A third of the sun and a third of the moon and a third of the stars, meaning no day or night for a third of the time. And this sounds like he really just disrupts the very markers of the structure of time. We judge the passage of time by the sun and moon stars. So if we can't see them, or if they're darkened, we may not know what's going on. But you might not think about it, but do you know how unsurvivable that would be? Do you know what the moon does to the tides? If I disrupt the movement of the moon, I mean, not that there's much water left anyway, but tides would still be a crucial system. If I darken the sun, even a third of it, I take the temperature down by a third. Think about it. There's a third less solar rays hitting the planet. Well, that makes us pretty cold. And there's some places that are really cold already. But any surviving plants in an area around the equator wouldn't fare too well if you drop temperatures by a third. We don't know how long it lasts, but we do know that it is temporary. So you imagine, let's say it is just this area, I think it is just a third of the planet, and you're looking at this whole area around the Middle East, and all their water is red. And in a definite line where it meets there's a marker, there's an end point. It's kind of like when you see the two oceans that meet each other and you get two different colors and they don't mix. Same idea. So you got red all the way out. This definite marker, no-go zone. There's no ships, there's no plants, there's no animals. Only death, judgment, and darkness. That doesn't sound very pleasant. I'll end with this thought. This tells us clearly that God is in charge, in case you ever wondered. He has say over everything. He's in charge of these plagues. This time frame, when we think of the tribulation, we tend to think of it as like Satan's free day. We get caught up in all the evil that's going to be there. We focus on the earthly human events, and it seems like all hell breaks loose, because it kind of does. We're removed, and sin runs rampant. The truth is, what God does is he removes the only thing that keeps him from judging the planet and the sin that's on it. Now, he's free to judge the devil and his ilk, as well as the sinful creation as a whole, which he has to do before he can restore it and rule properly from Israel on earth. These verses don't actually contain that many words. Pretty short, quick to get through. It's the words themselves that reveal so much. He is God, and he is done with them. This is a point where God's just done. More than he's ever been done before. If he could have ever been fed up, this trumps it. There's never been a time like this. There'll never be a time like this. They've offended all of the Godhead, and they've rejected and killed one of them. 1/3 of the Godhead. Maybe that's why he targets 1/3 of everything. Turnabout's fair play, right? Jesus is the creator, and the creation is judged. Jesus shed his blood for us, and now they get a blood in the water that kills them and their food. Jesus gave the law and now judges them with a fire representation of it. He gives us living water so that we'll never thirst again. They get lethal water that kills them. They want to drink it. They don't want to drink of the water he offers, but they want to drink of this. Well, this one's poisoned. This is the repercussions of your actions and the results of your choice. It's solemn in the sense that this was not meant to be. These people were not meant to be here. They're just not. As Peter tells us in 2 Peter 3:9, God is not slack concerning his promises. So it seems like sin gets to go unpunished. It does, doesn't it? Let's be honest. You watch the news, you watch all this stuff. It's great that all these things come out, but I haven't seen anything happen because of it. Sin gets to go unpunished a lot, it seems. But the funny thing is it seems like they take forever to see judgment, but judgment is building. Whether man gives it or not, God's judgment is building. And all of it will be judged. Judgment is coming, and it may not be swift in our terms, but it is decisive. And none of them will escape that he doesn't allow to. The reason these go in sequence like this is because even still, even in this moment, God is not willing that any should perish. You'll find in Revelation it's noted a few times about their repentance or lack thereof, because that's kind of the point. He's still giving them room. Isn't that crazy? This is his final judgment, his final outpouring, and he is still giving them room to repent. As fed up as he is, he's never that fed up. That's why they're still around. Otherwise, he just wipe them out and be done with it. The whole point of pouring out this judgment over time is to give them room, so that when final judgment is done, they can't say a word. All of this has been proven for thousands of years, and now you're getting a show like you've never seen before in this 7-year period, where I had 2 witnesses that do miracles, which we're getting to, and then all this judgment, and you guys still reject it. I've proven myself. And if you think this isn't on nationwide or worldwide coverage on CNN and all over your phones, right? Everybody's going to see everything. You're going to know everything that's going on. Everybody knows this is going on. Those people are still around because he's long-suffering. Peter tells us some will be saved out of a group that needs judged many times. And that's true. Over and over and over again. There's always a remnant. Always. Even when an entire kingdom is wiped out with Solomon. The point being to wipe that line out. One made it through to continue the line. There's always one. There's always a remnant. You consider how many people were on the earth with the flood? God wiped them all out. But he left 8. But there were upwards of 5 billion people on the planet by estimates. That's crazy. And 8 made it. That's a pretty slim margin. But he always allows some. These people have the same right to salvation that any of us do. And sometimes that's easy to forget. Sometimes it's easy to watch the bad or hear about the bad all the time from people telling you or from the news or whatever, and forget that these people are as in bad a need as you used to be. And they deserve it as much as you ever did. He allows them room to come to salvation because of that. And we should be grateful for that, because that is why we have time to reach our loved ones, isn't it? That's why we're still here. He gives us room. It's why we even had time to get saved ourselves. Otherwise, God would have dealt with it already. But he knew we would come around. Because the remaining ones have rejected the gospel, that they're subject to this judgment. We are saved from this judgment thanks to the blood of Jesus. Paul makes it really clear, Romans 5:9, much more than being now justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. What wrath? This wrath. The wrath of God. It's the only time the Bible talks about the wrath of God being poured out. It's the only time you need to save from wrath. When? Day of the Lord. That's when his wrath comes. Very specific terms, very specific purposes. The punishment of the wrath of God that comes upon all those who rejected him and wouldn't take the way out when he gave them the chance. The way that he gave his life so that we could have life. He takes no joy in judging anyone ever. And that's why he died. He died because he hates this judgment so much. He has to give you a way out, but he can't just not judge. It's not reality. It has to be judged. So he paid the price so that these people could get out. But he wants everyone to be saved. So as I close, the disciples asked, when would this happen? And Jesus said, you don't get to know. You just have to be ready. That's the doctrine of imminency. It can occur at any time. We don't know the date of the day of the Lord. This judgment that's going to be poured out. Even though it's interesting, there's no time. Even though 7-year marker beforehand, he still says nobody's going to know the day or hour that I show up. So we have to be ready, right? We have to be ready because if the rapture occurs now, then people will have been left behind. And that's why we're here, to make sure none of that happens. So when is the best time to get saved? Right now. Today. There's no better time. So for anyone listening or watching, don't wait. We're coming up on Easter where we celebrate this exact purpose, this exact moment. If you haven't accepted salvation, what's the holdup? It can all be fixed today. Your life can be saved by the blood of Jesus. Don't wait. Let's stand and sing.